chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier says Britain and the bloc are not yet close to a deal. It was hoped an agreement would be reached in order to hold a summit later this month. Theresa May updated ministers on progress today, but it seems the issue of the Northern Ireland backstop remains as divisive as ever. RGK Shadia Edwards-Dashty joins me now here in the studio for more on this. So Shadia, we know that they've had a meeting there in the cabinet. Are we going to be any closer to a deal, do you think, at this stage?
Well, really, it seems to be so near, but yet still so far. That phrase really does encapsulate exactly where the government's at with all of this. Yet another crunch cabinet meeting that was held there at Downing Street. The Prime Minister summoning her top team to discuss exactly where the government's at. But it really does seem like we're going around slightly in circles here. Theresa May saying, yes, we are 95% there with the withdrawal agreement, but it's that crucial 5% that's still the sticking point, which remains to be the Irish border question. Now, what's emerging with this backstop issue is this idea of a mechanism. So that essentially means that the whole of the UK would remain within the customs union temporarily. That idea that at a later date it would be reviewed. So really the key point there is that the whole of the UK would be in the customs union, but not indefinitely. Now, Theresa May said that quite confidently. She said that quite robustly. She said she was confident that the UK and the EU would reach a deal. They'd reach it soon, but not at any cost. So quite positive words coming out there from the cabinet this morning, but unfortunately it's not all smiles for her, because pouring cold water onto the speculation that a deal is round the corner was indeed the Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar. Now he today has reaffirmed that Dublin will not accept an expiry date on the backstop agreement, and indeed echoing such sentiments we hear again from Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator. He says the EU won't sign off a deal unless the Irish border issue is finally resolved.
We are not yet there, as I said previously, about this last part of the negotiation on the withdrawal agreement. We need an operational backstop for Ireland. We are willing to consider improvements to the backstop, but we need to reach an agreement for this backstop, and this backstop must be, we need, to be clear, we need a genuine backstop, an operational backstop.
Now, following that statement there, he also took to Twitter and he sent a very clear message in black and white that unequivocally says, we are not there yet. There either must be a solution to ensure that there is no hard border, or the UK and the EU are nowhere near a deal. Now, talking about that idea that a clock is ticking, it now suddenly seems like the clock is hurtling forwards, because at one stage we were expecting an emergency Brexit summit in the next few weeks, but that doesn't really look like it's likely to happen anytime soon at best. Both sides are now clinging on to the hope that it might happen at the end of the month. But if we don't see that happen, we're in a bit of a sticky situation as we roll into December, Christmas, the new year. And if that happens, we might actually have to start looking into no-deal scenario preparations, because the UK simply cannot walk into March without a safety net put in place. Now, as for the DUP, they're the party, of course, that are currently propping up the government. It almost seems like they are almost one step ahead in all of this, as they're saying that we're already on a no-deal path, and that a no-deal scenario would have serious consequences for the economy. So perhaps it's now time to accept that and move forward. But as for today's crunch cabinet meeting, it almost seems like it was a meeting about a meeting, indeed, because ministers have the impression that they might indeed be summoned back to number 10 as early as later this week. So as for all of that, to discuss the terms of the withdrawal agreement, it really must be said that Key's saying nothing is agreed until everything is agreed.
Shadia, thanks very much indeed for that update. So with London and Brussels still at loggerheads over the Northern Ireland backstop, how likely is the prospect of a no-deal Brexit? And are Theresa May's allies, the DUP, right to suspect the talks will fail to bring about an agreement? Well, to talk about this, I'm now joined by senior partner at Brexit Partners, Professor John Ryan. John, good to see you here in the studio. So we're hearing from the government that it will not accept a permanent backstop situation, and yet we hear very differently from Brussels at the moment. Is there any end to this deadlock, this impasse now?
Well, the British government will probably have to think about folding again their hand on this, because they've had to compromise and compromise and compromise to go towards the EU position all the way through. And we go through this all the time. We have lots of meetings, there's going to be a decision, then it's put off for another few days. When I came here the last time, I said that basically this could go on until December into January. So we are still at a stage where nothing is agreed on this issue, and nothing looks like it's going to be agreed on this issue.
But what is agreed is that both sides say there should be no new checks on this border. Is that really realistic? Because we're talking about a border between the EU and the UK. Surely there've got to be some checks.
Well, they don't want a hard border. That is both sides don't want to have that. So they're trying to work that one around all the complications here in terms of treaties and everything. So I think they both genuinely want that, but if there's no deal, it will be a hard border and there will be checks.
And what about the idea that maybe a backstop should just apply to Northern Ireland, or should it apply to the whole of the UK?
Well, if it applies to the whole of the UK, the idea would be from the British side that would be temporary. A backstop only for Northern Ireland would throw in the DUP's veto, and they've made that very clear that that is unacceptable for them. The question I would ask is, when will the government, or when will a new government actually throw the DUP overboard and actually do a deal on this and get to Parliament and say, look, we've got a deal, this is the best we can do, vote for it.
But is that possible? I mean, the DUP hold all the cards here. 95% of this agreement apparently has been signed and sealed in effect. 5% still remains undecided. It all now depends on the DUP, and they could actually cause that no-deal scenario.
They could. They're actually saying there will be no deal. So that's what they're saying. The idea that we're talking about EU, Dublin and the Cabinet, they're talking about this backstop. The DUP are very clear where they stand. No one's been under any illusions about their own positions. So basically, I think there is a difficulty there of trying to square that. And that's why I say at some stage, someone along the line, for the greater interest of the United Kingdom, may have to throw them overboard.
And for the greater interest of the EU, because it simply doesn't want a no-deal scenario itself, does it?
No, of course it doesn't. No, and it would be quite bad for the Irish Republic, but they are, Varadkar is under a lot of pressure now. He spoke in Dáil Éireann today, and a kind of compromised language. He was trying to be fluid about this backstop yesterday, and I think that he came under severe pressure from opposition parties in Dáil Éireann when he was talking. And he said basically, look, when we had the Good Friday Agreement, we had to be a little bit nimble with the language we used to get to that agreement. That's what I'm trying to do. But nevertheless, domestically, he's under pressure not to move anywhere towards the British position, and he won't.
Are they over-politicising the Good Friday Agreement, saying that any hard border would actually threaten the peace process?
No, I think it would be a difficulty, and I think it would look very bad for the United Kingdom if they were seen to be walking away from that agreement, and that there would be violence reoccurring again. And we've had threats from many different places about that.
What about then the fact that here we have a situation where a no deal is likely, and you've just been to Germany, I understand. What is the sentiment there? Because surely the EU don't want to push the UK's position so much so that the DUP can actually bring down the government on this, and that's not what the EU wants. They clearly want to still negotiate with the Tory government and Theresa May, do they? Do they not? And is there a fear, a sentiment, you've just come back from Germany, that we could end up with this no-deal situation and a collapse of the Tory government?
Well, they've got their own problems in terms of, but to answer your question directly, the government and the public policy groups that are there, and the party politicians and bureaucrats are keeping their cards close to their chests and saying, but basically, we're not really that bothered if there's a no deal. If there's a no deal, we'll have to, go forward and deal with that as it comes along. I mean, they would prefer not to have it. Where there is an uncomfortable feeling is among businesses, who are feeling that this is one of their biggest export markets, and a no deal would cause a lot of disruption to supply chains. But let's remember, the DUP, if they topple the government, it may lead to an election where the Labour Party may get elected. There may be a second referendum, but what I'm seeing from Brussels and generally from a European side is that there is an idea that maybe we have to extend Article 50. And that would be the thing, that we don't go down to the 29th of March and that we've got a deadline there, that we can extend it. And there would be a willingness, as far as I can see, that if there was going to be progress in the discussions, that they would be able to extend the Article 50.
Professor John Ryan, thank you very much. Good to hear your thoughts on this. Thanks for joining us.